Hey, everybody. Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast.
They demand my alter ego, but I won't go.
And on today's show, we have a guest that I have been trying to get on for a while. He is a local celebrity, if not a national celebrity. He ran two of the great restaurants here in Tampa Bay. He's a music guy. He's a culture guy. He's a writer. He's a philosopher. He's all these things. We got Greg Baker on the show today. How you doing?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me.
So I knew your reputation before I even knew you. I knew your restaurant before I even knew you. I only think it's recently that we've become friends on social media. But Refinery, if I'm remembering correctly, was kind of the initial offering of the Seminole Heights kind of cultural revolution, as it were. I don't know what else pre-existed it, but that's kind of what I remember starting to bring people in that direction.
Yeah, for Seminole Heights, Ella's and the Independent opened a few months before we did.
But it was all right around the same time.
Yeah.
Now, how did you end up? Were you in Seminole Heights for a while before that, or did you select that area, or how is it that you came to be there?
Oh, I've lived in Seminole Heights off and on since the late 80s.
Really? So you've seen it kind of ebb and flow and do everything. Well, it's funny because it kind of goes through kind of a advanced repetitions or advanced ebb and flow. And, I was funny because this kind of came up in my conversation with Joe Hunt, who we're mutual friends with. But I bought this building in the summer of 2017 around the time of the serial killer. And that was such a big thing in this area because, I was so excited about finally owning my own place, and I couldn't get a client to drive here because no one wanted to be here after hours. And I'm not even anywhere near where that was happening, but that was such a bizarre chain of events, coming into this area.
Those were dark days for business owners around here. I mean, I don't want to minimize the 4 people who lost their lives during that whole thing, but, wow, that whole thing was just,
and it's still
out.
It's still bizarre. Like, as an attorney, I'm kind of aware of it and where it's at. And there was the whole thing with Andrew Warren and the parents weren't going to talk about the kid and they were going to prosecute. And it's just, I'm not by no means a scholar on serial murderers or anything else, but so much about that whole case kind of didn't line up with the common knowledge of that sort of stuff.
No. When they finally caught him, we all breathed a collective sigh of relief.
Yeah.
But then the weirdness really started when things started coming out in the news of
so
how
what
all
year
that was going.
What year did the Refinery open?
We opened in 2010.
And what was it? Did it stay open until 2018, 2017?
2019.
Okay, 2019. And then during that time, explain to me kind of the evolution, because then what was the other restaurant that you opened north of there?
Fodder and Shine.
Okay. And then at some point, did you consolidate those two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pardon me.
No, you're good.
Yeah. So we opened up the Refinery. It was supposed to be this little grungy bar that happened to have really good food.
Yeah.
The city got in the way and we accidentally turned into a restaurant before we could ever be a bar.
Right.
Which, okay, fine. We'll go with that. As time went on and accidentally got kind of famous for a little while. And,
it was a destination spot. People were going out of their way to go there.
Yeah, in 2011, we were named a semifinalist as best new restaurant in the country for James Beard Awards, which is like, the Oscars of the food world.
For sure, yeah.
So, and that was nothing we set out to do and nothing we were prepared for the backlash of.
But you had a pedigree going into that restaurant, didn't you? You've been in that business for a while before you got into the Refinery.
I've been working in kitchens since 1983. So, yeah.
Are you from Tampa originally, or?
I grew up in Clearwater.
Okay.
I moved there when I was 10.
Okay.
And then pretty much as soon as I had a driver's license, I was over here in the big city all the time.
Right.
Where all the fun was.
Right.
Basically where all the music was,
So was music a part of your life at an early age?
Oh yeah.
What were some of your bands about? Were you in the skateboarding scene, punk scene? What was your?
I was definitely in the punk scene. I don't have any kind of balance to be a skateboarder.
Sure. But those two worlds kind of overlap a good deal. I mean, a lot of kids are either introduced to one by the other, you got into punk, start skateboarding, get into skateboarding.
Yeah. I mean, and the communities just kind of all commingled to be the scene, Now,
I know you play a little bit because I remember somewhat recently your wife got you a pretty awesome, was it a birthday gift or she?
Yeah. Actually, I played in bands for a long time. Did some national touring. We're on a tiny little indie label. Was on a tiny indie label for a while.
So music came before the food world.
I think they pretty much started about the same time.
Okay, yeah.
I think I took my paycheck from being a dishwasher and bought my first bass.
What were some of the restaurants that you worked at?
Most of them are gone at this point.
I came up in a Richard Gons Mart, so I worked in Columbia's and Cha Cha Coconuts and every aspect of that. So I got to inhabit that world for a little bit, and it is a different world. You're awake at night and you're asleep during the day. And a lot of the people are, earning just enough cash to party that night and do it all again the next day. So it is a different world.
Yeah. I mean, what do you do when you get off work and the rest of the world's asleep?
It's closed. Yeah. You're drinking at everybody else's house.
I mean, people who work 9 to 5 jobs go to happy hour.
Yeah.
Happy hour just happens to start at midnight and, ends when the bar closes.
I remember a lot of late nights at Bootius Maximus in downtown St. Pete.
Oh, wow.
Did you ever go there?
No.
That was one of those, they would stay open till like 4, so you could just go there and get some drinks in before you went to bed. So was Refinery your first show that was your idea, your plan, your baby, or had you had anything like that before?
No, it was the
then?
first brick and mortar we owned.
Okay.
My wife and I owned a personal chef and upscale catering company before that.
How many years did you do that?
When did we start? Let's see. I was 40. When was that? It only lasted for about 3 years.
Now, did she have a background in that world too, or is that something that came about when you two got together?
She was a bartender and server forever.
Oh, okay.
And
so you guys knew every inch of the restaurant business backward and forwards.
Yeah, and when we opened up, we knew all the mistakes in the book. We'd already seen them. We just started writing our own book.
Yeah. So did you guys ever work together at a restaurant? Is that when you guys met or
no?
No. As I told you off air, I won't get into the specifics of how I know her, but I actually met her before I met you. And I mean, such an interesting character in her own right. I mean, the both of you are kind of like a super group, as it were. I mean, very interesting people, dynamic people, kind of occupy a lot of worlds. And so
she's the extrovert to my introvert,
Well, that's how, believe it or not, despite the podcast, that's the relationship my wife and I have too. I'm usually finding whatever room at the party I can be away from people, and she's shaking everybody.
Oh, there's a dog? Okay. Yeah, I'll be over here.
I'll be back in a couple hours. That's right. So the bands that you grew up playing in, all punk music, hardcore music, that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
And were you guitar, bass? What were you?
I was a bass player. I only recently started playing guitar.
What was your first bass?
Oh God, I don't even. I think
usually it's a P bass. It's some form of a knockoff P bass.
Yes, it was actually.
Yeah.
It was a Palmer, I believe.
All the guitarists, it's always an Ibanez, and all the basses, it's a Squire P bass. Yeah. So, who were some of your bands that you were into around that time? I think how old, you don't need to tell me exactly how old you are, but approximately how old are you?
I'm 53.
Okay, well there you go. So you're not quite 10 years older than I am. So I'm trying to think of who would have been the bands of the day back then.
I mean, I'm trying to remember what the first punk rock show.
I mean, you got a Bad Religion shirt on, so right away I know I like you. But I mean, were you aware of Bad Brains and Minor Threat and Black Flag and all that kind of stuff back then?
I mean, I saw Black Flag.
You did
at the Cuban Club 3 or 4 times.
Which singer?
Rollins.
Really?
Time. Yeah.
Oh God,
I was there for
super jealous.
I was there for the infamous riot, and yeah, so. I think my first punk rock show was Iggy Pop at the Tampa Theater.
Oh my God.
Ago. So
holy shit. Both those just right off the bat are dream. Iggy Pop at Tampa Theater.
Yeah.
Wow. Did he get out on the stage? Did he jump off the stage? Did he break any glass on his chest? Do anything cool?
I'm trying to clearly remember. It would
be hard to clearly remember an
such
Iggy
a
Pop
spectacle.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy was just, when he gets on stage, he just flips a switch.
Still
and turns into, he's in his 70s now.
Yeah.
And he's just like,
who else opened for him? Do you remember any?
No, I don't.
My wife found a concert poster. I think it was the Chili Peppers at the Hub or something like that. I don't know if you would have remembered that show, but it was around that time.
Yeah.
Been like Freaky Styley era or like super early. Yeah. Chili Peppers. So, okay. Keep going. I'm intrigued. Black Flag, Iggy Pop. Who else?
God, anybody who came through Tampa at that point in time, it was just like, if there was a show, it was, you were going because it was something to do where you didn't have to worry about the local wrestling team wanting to kick your ass.
Right. Right. Now you said you played outside the state too, correct? You said you traveled and played around, toured?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where else did you play? Did you play up in New York or any of the?
Yeah. Hit most of the states east of the Mississippi. That band's still going here.
What's their name?
Flat Stanley.
Okay. All right. Are they on social, like Spotify and that sort of thing? Okay. I'll have to check them out.
They've been going for like 20 years, and I've had kind of a dysfunctional relationship with them.
What got you out of it?
Got out of playing music.
Yeah. Or at least traveling, playing live.
Well, opening my own business kind of put the kibosh on.
Was that the catering business or?
No, it was, actually, we opened the Refinery in the end of January. I played my last show in December.
Oh, so it was just that recent that you stopped.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just been within the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been working to trying to get back into it, but COVID got in the way of pretty much everything.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, gosh, between your music, your restaurants and everything else, well, I mean, was everything that you had closed by the point that COVID hit as far as the brick and mortar stuff?
Brick and mortar. Yeah. But I've still got, I have a hospitality consulting agency at this point. So, I've been luckily I didn't have payroll to cover or anything like that.
Well, I mean, so I bring this up a lot, but I lost both my parents in 2018 and 2019. And as much of a bummer as that is, in some weird way, I feel a relief that I didn't have to have them alive through this or get sick through this to where, a lot of people aren't able to go be by their parents' side or whatever else. So in a weird way with the restaurants, having them closed before having to deal with all this shit, not that it's great, but it's kind of like you sidestepped a train coming at you.
I mean, 2017 almost killed me when we had the hurricane that was supposed to just wipe Tampa off the map and didn't. And then
the shooter,
the serial killer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was stressed and depressed and anxious to the point where I thought about killing myself. So I don't know if I could have survived running a restaurant.
Yeah. So so what did we say? 9 years that it was open. Did you have formal training in the kitchen, or was it all on the job? Were you all in restaurants?
Oh, no, I went to culinary school after. I don't like to say that I attended college more than I attempted college.
Yeah. Yeah. Attempted college. Sounds like an album title. So the menu was your baby there, right? I mean, that was you picking, because if I recall, it changed weekly, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I really worked hard to foster creativity in my staff. So lots of things were collaborative efforts.
I love it's such a random, but I love the whole silverware and plate. Like it was like not the same plate, not the same silverware. I mean, it was just.
Well, I mean, we opened up the refinery with about half of the money that we were supposed to,
right?
That we had
earmarked or had planned on earmarking. Yeah.
Pro forma calls for $150,000. We got 75.
Right.
Okay. So what are we going to do? These plates are $1 a piece.
But it worked out in your favor. Yeah.
I mean, but we could keep the prices at a much more manageable level. I mean, when we opened up, it was my goal to never top $20 on an entree.
Right.
So we could keep those prices in line if I didn't have to worry about losing a $7 fork every night.
Right. Now, what did the brunch thing, did that start off originally or did that come later? Because that became quite a big deal too, didn't it?
Yeah. No, we did brunch from the word go.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big mover. I remember that was a scene there for a good while.
Yeah. And, when we opened up, it was just me and one other person in the kitchen. So it was 6.5 days a week. And
brutal.
When brunch was over, we would just fall down on the loading dock. And
did you enjoy it, any of it? Or do you look back on it as...
It was awesome until it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somewhere along the line,
that was your traveling around the country in a van playing shows. I mean, that was your version of getting the van, the Black Flag, or that sort of thing. Yeah,
I mean, we had such a small, tight knit staff. It had a very familial feel to everything, and eventually we grew to a point where that just wasn't a thing anymore.
Right,
and I never really considered that I would have to worry about having our dishwasher come in and rob the place at gunpoint.
Right. Yeah.
Yet it did.
Right. Well, life can take a turn on you.
Yeah. So, I started falling out of love with it. And at the end.
When did you open up the second restaurant, or at least take over the second restaurant? Because did that restaurant open before you took it over, or what was the succession there?
So the refinery was first.
Right.
I think it was the end of 2014. My wife and I had this grandiose idea that we've pretty much maxed out what we could make out of the original little building.
All right.
But we wanted to be able to pay our staff more. So, but there wasn't going to be more money coming in.
Right. We fully realized what was available there.
Yeah. So we bought this condemned building and transformed it from an old body shop into what was Fodder and Shine. And
what was the concept there, or how would you characterize the concept there as opposed to Refinery? Because I mean, it wasn't the exact same deal.
No, they were nowhere close.
Right. So what was the concept behind that?
Well, I mean, the original concept was the rebirth of Florida cracker cuisine.
Yeah.
Nothing. Anything that was on the menu existed prior to 1930.
Right.
Yeah. And I couldn't really convey that to people, especially the press, and everybody hated it. So it just kind of turned in, I was like, well, I got cracker food for you. Like, well, we want Cracker Barrel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So scrapped all that. No, here's fried chicken and country fried steak, and I mean, people liked it, but I got no joy out of it.
Sure.
And when our lease came up in the original building, it was, well, what do we do? It's going to take us 2 years to find a new place and get it built out and get open there, or do we sacrifice one of these restaurants? Let's sacrifice the one that I don't like.
Right. And bring Refinery over. And so was it 2 years at that location, or?
Just under 2 years.
Yeah. How's your stress level these days compared to then?
Oh man, my blood pressure is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have to manage people. I don't have to wonder if, people are like, how many, I have 4 people scheduled today. How many are actually going to show up?
Yeah. What's the breakage on that? Yeah. So, with the consulting, what is that? Are you doing that out of your house? Do you have an office, or, are you doing it nationally, locally? How does that work?
No, I do. It's a national company. I don't keep an office. It's just, I can work in my living room.
So someone says, hey, I got an idea to open a restaurant here. Will you look at my plan, come out and take a look at the whatever, and tell me what you think I need to, whether you think it'll work or what I need to do or what I don't, that.
Yeah, basically guide people through the entire startup process, or a whole reboot or tune-up kind of process.
It's amazing what succeeds and what doesn't succeed. I had Sean O'Brien here last night. He's involved with Cat Street Deli, and he did a lot of the booking and promotion in Tampa. And I'm always amazed what makes it and what doesn't make it and why. So, like, What would be your advice to someone who was wanting to do that locally, just in general? Like, I'll give you an example. I've keep going to Keith Ulray at Microgroove and asking him what it's going to take for me to put out some vinyl for this band. And usually his first answer is just don't do it. So I'm assuming it's probably going to be a similar type of thing with you. Like, if you want it to be profitable, if you don't want to have a room full of vinyl that no one will buy off of you, just don't do it. I mean, is it a similar type of thing with the restaurant business, or?
I mean, it can be financially rewarding. Nobody's going to get Oprah rich off of owning a restaurant by any means,
right?
But it's just being able to know who your clearly know who your clientele is, what they're going to buy at what price point. And at this point, the smart money is all on fast casual, grab and go,
or Uber Eats or whatever. You can just bang your product out and get it to people at their home.
Yeah. Which is cool because it, cuts down on the amount of rent you got to pay to be able to seat 70 people or what have you.
Right.
However, there's also the downside to all of that is that there's that dining experience is kind of dying in the country, and
it kills me because
our food is gonna everything's gonna be the equivalent of a Chipotle.
Yeah. You pick your meat, pick your vegetable, and pick your tortilla, and you're done. But what killed me about it is, so before I had kids, my wife and I we'd go up to New York, we'd go up to Boston, Chicago, and you had that experience that people would get in your restaurants. I'm not saying the exact same, but there was some thought put into it. It was more than just the food. It was the experience. It was the ritual of being around people, all of that stuff. And, we fall into such a trap here in Florida and Tampa of Applebee's and all these types of things, that to have some kind of culture, a contemporary or a younger culture here, it's scraping to get out. And it seemed as though Seminole Heights and Tampa Heights was kind of getting to that point, and then the pandemic hit. And so do you think it's something that they can rebound from? Do you think it's something that they need to rebound from? I mean, do you think there's still going to be kind of that direction in this area, or no?
I'm going to get crucified for this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it.
4 people that listen to the show, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'll be your lawyer.
When I first started coming around to hang out in Tampa, the after parties were always somewhere in Seminole Heights, which is what, got me over here. So, trying to find ask the prostitutes on Nebraska where the people with the funny hair lived. And, but it was always kind of, from that point on, or I preceded me, of course, but, it was always kind of like, this creative cultural center of the city. Everybody accredited to Ybor, but you had a bunch of actors and artists living in lofts above empty storefronts.
Right.
This was just where people could afford poor musicians could afford a house to rent, whatever. So that was really what led us to opening in the neighborhood. Was it's the whole creative vibe of everything.
Right.
That's gone.
What happened to it, would you say?
I mean, people saw it as the hip place to get an almost gritty inner city experience. That homes are selling for $300,000 and up. And
well, do you think it was always temporary, or did something happen that kind of changed the direction?
I mean, really, the creative people got squeezed out,
which is kind of what always happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean that's kind of what happened. So did it move somewhere? I mean, is there a new area? Is there?
I mean, I don't. Most of the people I've talked to have moved or just scattered throughout the city at this point, and we had this potential to be, create this really cool,
pocket, this little enclave.
Really, people didn't want it.
Yeah.
I fought from the I fought from the beginning is people wanted me to be serving chicken Caesar salads.
Yeah.
The tastes haven't, it may be a new dish, but the tastes haven't changed that much. And the majority of the people who are moving in don't necessarily want that creative element. They want something that's safe. Give me buffalo fried cauliflower or whatever. You know? Something that you can get anywhere in the city, and nothing really truly unique about it anymore. It just, we have a place and it's got TVs and we serve alcohol, and here's a fairly generic.
Here's your medicine.
Menu.
Take your medicine. Well, so I grew up in St. Pete, and St. Pete when I was a kid, nothing was there. It was all halfway houses, and it was like Moss Brothers or whatever was downtown. There's nothing culturally drawn there. And then it had a big boom. I don't kind of know where it is in that now, if it's on the other end of it or whatever. I think with everything in that world with the pandemic is kind of on the other end of it. It's just a matter of whether they'll recover. But, St. Pete really seemed to hold a resurgence to it for a while. And I've, as much as I always hear about Bennett coming in and a bunch of money and the waterfront and all this other stuff, I just don't know where that gets us. If it's just going to be tons of apartment buildings and armature works type places, or if there's going to be independent mom and pop shops that can kind of live and thrive in between there.
Yeah. There's got to be a balance between it.
How much interaction did you have with the city? That's been a big thing now. I talk a lot with like Tom DeGeorge from Crowbar and a lot of these different people who are fighting to have live music in there. And did you find that the city was advocates for you, adversaries for you? You mentioned they kind of gave you a hard bit of time in the beginning there.
Yeah, most of my interactions with the city were not
pleasurable.
Pleasant, But Bob Buckhorn was nice enough to trot me out as his success story, and the foodie mayor, and put me into his state of the city presentation, and I actually got a front row seat for that because and
you're the golden boy.
Then he made me some promises for assistance, and when we were building out the second restaurant, and never made good on them. To the tune of $100,000 of that, and I'm not made of money.
It's brutal.
So Bob and I always had a strained relationship after that.
Well, I know you're pretty. Are you okay talking politics, or do you not want to? Because I know you're pretty passionate about it. You and I are commenting on the same posts in some regard. Before you came in here today, evidently there's a new tax issue that just came out today with him about some engineered windfall in 2016. Yesterday was the announcement he wasn't going to do any more debates, and then they kind of backtracked towards the end of the day and said, well, we'll do them, but we're just going to push them back. So what are you preparing for? Do you think he's getting a second term, or you think the country can survive a second term?
I don't know. It's so fractionalized at this point in time. I mean, you've got the Gravy Seals up in Michigan plotting to
Gravy Seals. Thank you so much for giving me the Gravy Seals. I meant to thank you about that. Thank you for reminding me. That was the greatest.
It's definitely not mine, but
but you gave it to me, so thank you for regifting it.
Kidnapping the governor to transport her across state lines, hold a mock trial, and execute her. What world do we live in? I don't know. I mean, there's an October surprise every day of the year.
Well, that's
now,
just it. So that's an interesting point. And that's something I thought about, because we're like 20 some odd days out from the election, and everybody's just saying, obviously don't feel too comfortable about all these double digit leads you hear about. You never know what's going to happen when you go to war with anybody. But I'm almost wondering if it might backfire, because literally every day of his presidency has been an October surprise. So I don't know what would rate as some kind of jaw dropper at this point that would change anything significantly.
I don't know. I'm just tired of being angry all the time. I want to see the man just go away and fade into obscurity.
I do, but would you agree with me that there's actually a worse future, which is it's not clear who won? Like that is the only thing that's worse than him winning in my mind is that 6 months or 5 months or however long of arguing about that. I think that would literally break the country.
Arguing is probably the best case scenario if that happens.
Oh yeah, it's all out warfare and riots and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really don't doubt that there's going to be huge amounts of doubt and disparagement thrown on the whole process if he loses.
I think I think Biden's got to break the backboard if we're gonna get through this with any kind of semblance of something in the future.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed watching the vice presidential debate the other night, not because of the content, but I was watching grown-ups talk.
Yeah. You missed that. No, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I've often said if they would have just primaried him, I would have probably been fine with Rand Paul or anybody else. I mean, not my ideal, but someone who's just, could put a sentence together and had some modicum of understanding of context and empathy. And it's just, you always, at least I did up until these past 4 years, feel like, well, there's always going to be an adult in the room. There's always these safeguards that are in place. We can't hit rock bottom. Things have been put in place to protect us about that. And obviously that wasn't true. No. It's just crazy. Well, I want to ask you this question, and I know hopefully it's not too personal of a question, but how would you characterize yourself today versus yourself, say, in 2009, 2008? Are you more heavy-hearted? Did what happened with the restaurant thing, did that break your heart? Did what happening with the country, did that break your heart? Or are you kind of past that and looking forward? I mean,
no, I don't think anybody can. I don't know. I need to walk that one back. Some people can, but I definitely can't be lighthearted with the political, economic state of the country right now. Yeah. The only people who are doing well are people who have money in the stock market.
Right.
So
I'm asking more about your life though. Like, are you in a good place now? I mean, do you miss the restaurant world, or are you completely done with her?
No, I got beaten and broken.
Yeah.
And,
that's out of your system.
I just couldn't do it anymore. I still love the idea of the business.
Yeah.
And I love being able to help people succeed. But at the end of the day, what I can do is, okay, here's your plans. Here's your problems. Here's how to fix them.
Right.
They're your problems. And I'm going home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't miss that at all. I have free time. I can spend time with my dogs. I can spend time with my wife.
Do you guys cook a lot at home, or?
Yeah.
Are you the proverbial chefs that are just eating bowls of cereal constantly because you don't want to?
I mean, there's points. Last night was definitely one of those. But, but yeah, we don't cook fancy. It's just,
make a mean grilled cheese.
Yeah, throw some meat on the grill and have a salad.
Yeah. So music, are you putting some more heart into that again? Are you playing a lot? Are you thinking about that? Or
well, trying to, but I'm not all that keen on getting into a room with people who, 5 people who all lead their lives and then screaming.
Yeah, socially distanced punk shows are kind of.
Yeah, it's not really a the possibility of infection is pretty strong from those activities.
Yeah.
I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah. No. Well. Yeah. I mean, I've listened to a lot of national acts say it's going to be 2022 before we start seeing big tours again. And I'm hoping, as I've expressed to other musicians who've been on this show, that hopefully this kind of shines a light on local music, because that's going to be your only option more and more these days. But some types of music I think can survive in that world, but a lot of the heavier, harder, that type of music, I mean, it's so predicated on the physicality of the experience that to not be able to have that, I don't even know how you have a show like that. It's upsetting. You know, I had been saying all year until someone reminded me yesterday that I went to Gasparilla Music Festival this year. So that was the only show I went to this year, where normally I would have been to 15, 20 shows by now. So it's bumming me out. But I know Tom's trying to reopen and do some of this stuff, but a world without live music, just that gives me a heavy heart. And you know, but I don't know what's going to come of it. Well, I really appreciate you coming down. I know you're a busy man, and I know you're taking seriously this whole thing and trying to, do the responsible thing. But I do appreciate you coming down.
Oh, absolutely. We've been trying to do this for a while.
Well, I mean, since I started to put two and two together, I knew your wife, and I was like, oh, you guys are married, and then started to everything. I was just like, I got to have that guy on. He's so interesting. So, well, I appreciate you so much. I wish you the best. I hope music takes off for you again, and that you find joy in your new venture and with your dogs and your wife and everything else like that. Thank you so much for coming by, Greg.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right.